Shall we begin? All right. So we are going to be talking about the sympathetic nervous system. We've already dealt with the parasympathetic one. Okay. So adrenergic nervous system has got the transmission which is known as adrenergic, though the main transmitter here is noradrenaline or norepinephrine, but we call it adrenergic transmission. It is strictly restricted to sympathetic nervous system. And norepinephrine, some places you call it, it is a British and American difference. So norepinephrine is the transmitter at most postganglionic sympathetic nerves except for sweat glands, wherein the postganglionic these nerves, the transmitter at sweat glands is acetylcholine. So norepinephrine is a transmitter at most postganglionic sympathetic nerves except at sweat glands, and epinephrine is characteristically secreted by the adrenal medulla. Dopamine is a transmitter at the basal ganglia, limbic system, chemoreceptor trigger zone, and in anterior pituitary. So at adrenergic transmission, you have transmitters as norepinephrine, epinephrine, dopamine, and naturally occurring or other endogenous catecholamines can also be present. Okay, so these are the main transmitters for adrenergic transmission. For parasympathetic transmission, the main and the only transmitter is acetylcholine. Just to revise. Now, synthesis of these transmitters. I'm sure you have been told about all that in your knowledge of biochemistry, but I'm going to be quickly repeating that because their precursors are important. Catecholamines like epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine are synthesized from tyrosine. And tyrosine is synthesized from dietary amino acid phenylalanine. So basically, phenylalanine you are obtaining from diet. And from phenylalanine, tyrosine is formed. Phenylalanine to tyrosine, tyrosine to levodopa, levodopa to dopamine, dopamine to norepinephrine, and norepinephrine to epinephrine. And you have some characteristic enzymes which are responsible for all these reactions. You have hydroxylases. Phenylalanine hydroxylase will lead to tyrosine formation. Tyrosine oxidase to levodopa. Levodopa to dopamine by L-amino acid decarboxylase. Dopa decarboxylase, levodopa to dopamine. Then you have beta hydroxylase, which will convert dopamine to norepinephrine, and norepinephrine to epinephrine will be happening by the enzyme N-methyl transferase, and their locations are all different where all these things are happening. Just try and see the slide. Tyrosine hydroxylase. It's widespread in sympathetic nerves and is present in cytoplasm. Likewise, aromatic L-amino acid decarboxylase is present in cytoplasm, and it requires some cofactors also. Like for tyrosine hydroxylase, you have tetrahydrobiopterin, pyridoxal phosphate for decarboxylase. Dopamine hydroxylase is present in the synaptic vesicles, while phenylethanol D-amine methyl transferase is present in the cytoplasm. What these enzymes are doing, we have already told you that these enzymes are important. Hydroxylase and oxidase for phenylalanine to tyrosine, tyrosine to levodopa, tyrosine oxidase. Then you have decarboxylase, which converts dopa to dopamine. Beta hydroxylase, another important enzyme for conversion of dopamine to norepinephrine. And this is happening in the synaptic vesicle, while these two reactions are happening in the cytoplasm. This reaction of methyltransferase, that is norepinephrine being transferred, converted to epinephrine, is happening in the adrenal medulla. Thyroxine hydroxylase is a rate limiting step in the synthesis of catecholamines. Okay. Increase norepinephrine concentration. Sorry. Tyrosine hydroxylase is a rate limiting step in the synthesis of catecholamines. Increased norepinephrine concentration in the neuron will lead to negative feedback mechanism, and that will inhibit the tyrosine hydroxylase. So everything in the body has to be need based. If there is excess of something, it should not be produced any extra anymore. Okay. So this is what is happening there. As I said, in the cytoplasm, you have phenylalanine to tyrosine, tyrosine to dopamine to dopa, dopa to dopamine. Dopamine will enter the synaptic vesicle, and there dopamine to norepinephrine along with ATP and substance P. Then it will be norepinephrine will come out of the synaptic vesicle and then go probably out of the cell membrane. And then what happens to norepinephrine, we will talk about it little later, but let us concentrate on the upper portion of what is happening. Sodium goes in, tyrosine goes in. Sodium dependent tyrosine transfer. Phenylalanine to tyrosine, tyrosine to dopa, dopa to dopamine. And then what happens? Once norepinephrine is released from the synaptic vesicle, it could be extruded out from the cell membrane. What will happen to norepinephrine? I am going to bring this comparison to acetylcholine. Remember what happened to acetylcholine once it was released. The main mechanism of degradation of acetylcholine was its disintegration by the enzyme acetylcholine esterase. So degradation was an important way of terminating the action of acetylcholine, which is extremely short acting. Now for norepinephrine, what eventually finishes its duration of its action? There could be 2-3 mechanisms. Number one, it could be again taken up back by the same cell. It could attach onto its autoreceptors, the presynaptic receptors, which will try and decrease its own release. This is what we said. Then there could be diffusion or metabolism, or else its action by attaching onto the postsynaptic membrane, postsynaptic cell. I'll repeat. Some of the norepinephrine can be taken back, reuptake. This reuptake can be, inhibited by indirectly acting sympathomimetic. Directly acting is mostly being told. It is adrenaline, noradrenaline. Indirectly acting sympathomimetic means cocaine and some tricyclic antidepressants. They will prevent the reuptake of norepinephrine back into the cell. So reuptake is one mechanism of termination of action. The other mechanism could be binding on to the autoreceptor. Some of it could diffuse and very little could be metabolized. And most of it could act on the postsynaptic membranes to produce its action. Okay. Now, adrenal medulla has 2 types of catecholamine containing cells. See, adrenal medulla is the only place where adrenaline or epinephrine is being produced from norepinephrine. So there are 2 types of cells, catecholamines are present in adrenal medulla. One could be the norepinephrine, the other is the epinephrine cells that have this enzyme methyltransferase. See, norepinephrine cells in the adrenal medulla will only have norepinephrine. But where you have epinephrine cells, you need to also have this enzyme, methyltransferase enzyme, that converts norepinephrine to epinephrine in the cytoplasm of the medulla. Now, after synthesis of epinephrine, it enters into the chromaffin granules for storage. See, it is going to be produced in the cytoplasm, and then it will be taken up by the chromaffin granules for storage. In adrenal medulla, 80% of the catecholamines are epinephrine and only 20% is norepinephrine. So you understood there are three main types of neurotransmitters directly acting: sympathomimetic neurotransmitters, norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine. Dopamine particularly in basal ganglia, epinephrine in adrenal medulla, and norepinephrine elsewhere at all postsynaptic places in the sympathetic nervous system other than sweat glands. Now, storage of these sympathomimetic amines. Granules take up dopamine from the cytoplasm and synthesis of norepinephrine occurs inside the granules. Norepinephrine is stored in the granule within the adrenergic terminal as a complex with ATP, 4 molecules with the help of a soluble binding protein known as chromogranin A. So you have norepinephrine along with ATP and binding protein chromogranin A. So acidic pH and excessive osmotic pressure inside the vesicle helps to prevent the leakage. Then release of norepinephrine or epinephrine. The propagation of action potential to the axon terminal activate calcium-dependent exocytotic release of norepinephrine. So whenever there is action potential, there is activation of calcium-dependent exocytotic release of norepinephrine. Indirectly acting sympathomimetics displace the norepinephrine from the synaptic vesicle and liberate it into the synaptic cleft. Independent of calcium-dependent exocytotic release. So there is propagation of action potential, calcium-dependent exocytotic release of norepinephrine will happen. Now there are some indirectly acting sympathomimetics. They displace the norepinephrine from the synaptic vesicle and this is then liberated into the synaptic cleft, independent of calcium-dependent exocytotic release. So one is the direct calcium-dependent exocytotic release of norepinephrine, while the other is indirectly through some indirect sympathomimetic drugs which will cause release of norepinephrine, which is calcium independent. I just told you that there are different ways of termination of action of catecholamines. One could be reuptake of the transmitter back to the nerve terminals. I told you this reuptake is being blocked by certain drugs like cocaine, which indirectly act as sympathomimetic by prolonging the action of norepinephrine at the synaptic cleft. So one mechanism of finishing of action of sympathomimetic amines is reuptake. The other is dilution by diffusion out of the junctional cleft. And the third, interestingly less important mechanism is metabolic transformation or enzymatic degradation. Norepinephrine release at varicosity of sympathetic neuron. What happens? First is action potential arrives at the varicosity. Depolarization, opening up of the voltage gated calcium channels. Calcium entry triggers the exocytosis or the release of norepinephrine. Then norepinephrine binds to the adrenergic receptor on the target. Activity ceases when norepinephrine diffuses away from the synapse and norepinephrine is transported, or else it could be transported back to the neuron. Norepinephrine can be taken back to the synaptic vesicles for re-release. They could be re-released, or else it could be metabolized to a less degree by enzymes known as MAO. MAO in the cytoplasm, and there's another one, COMT, in the liver. This is the adrenergic receptor, action potential, calcium goes in. You have phenylalanine to tyrosine, tyrosine to dopa, dopa to dopamine to norepinephrine, norepinephrine release, and then there is this degradation by the enzyme known as MAO. MAO is present in the cytoplasm. So this is all about how it is synthesized and what is the adrenergic transmission, how it is released and how its action is terminated. Now there are two uptake mechanisms that exist for terminating the action of adrenergic catecholamines, uptake 1 and uptake 2. Uptake 1 occurs at the presynaptic nerve terminal to remove the neurotransmitter from the synapse is uptake 1. Uptake 2 occurs at the postsynaptic and peripheral cells to prevent the transmitter from diffusing laterally. So uptake 1 occurs at the presynaptic terminal to remove the neurotransmitter from the synapse only, while uptake 2 occurs at the postsynaptic or the peripheral cells to prevent the transmitter from diffusing laterally. There are two mechanisms of uptake of adrenergic, and you realize that uptake is the most important mechanism of its termination of action. Okay. So, uptake of catecholamine. It is the most efficient mechanism which is happening at the presynaptic junction. It transports norepinephrine at a higher rate than epinephrine. The most important mechanism for termination of action of norepinephrine is uptake 1. It is mediated by active amine pump known as NET transporter. Norepinephrine, NET, that is norepinephrine transporter at the neuronal membrane by the sodium coupled mechanism, followed by vesicular uptake. I'll repeat. Axonal uptake or uptake 1 transports norepinephrine at a higher rate than epinephrine. It is the most important mechanism for termination of action of norepinephrine. It is mediated by the norepinephrine transporter at the neuronal membrane by the sodium coupled mechanism, and it is followed by the vesicular uptake. Now uptake of catecholamine. Vesicular uptake. It is mediated by vesicular monoamine transporter 2 amine pump. It transports the monoamine in exchange of hydrogen ion. Now uptake 2 is present on the postsynaptic or non-neuronal cell membrane and is carried out by the ENT, that is the epinephrine transporter or OCT, organic catecholamine transporter. Transports adrenaline at a higher rate and is not sodium dependent. So one is the uptake 1, the other is the vesicular uptake by vesicular monoamine transporter or VMAT. Third one is the uptake 2. It is present at the postsynaptic junction, non-neuronal, and it is not sodium dependent, and It is more transports adrenaline at a higher rate than noradrenaline. Then after that, after the release, the termination, uptake, we are also talking about now metabolism of catecholamines, or another way of terminating the action. One was reuptake, the other was diffusion or dilution. The third is metabolism. So how does the metabolism of sympathomimetic amines happen? There are two main enzymes, monoamine oxidase and catechol O methyltransferase. Norepinephrine, after uptake 1 into the exoplasm, is acted upon by MAO. So norepinephrine, after its uptake 1 into the exoplasm, uptake 1 is presynaptic, neuronal. It is acted upon by MAO. Norepinephrine, which diffuses into the circulation, is acted upon by COMT, mainly in liver. And the major metabolite excreted in urine is vinyl mandelic acid. So norepinephrine, by its uptake 1, is going to be taken up into the exoplasm and acted upon by MAO. Whatever diffuses outside into the system or circulation is going to be degraded by COMT in liver, and the major metabolite is vinyl mandelic acid. Now, vesicular monoamine transfer uptake, VMAT, that is the enzyme which is responsible for reuptake of the neurotransmitters into the vesicle. There are certain inhibitors like rezapine, ketanserin. These are potent inhibitors of VMAT2. They mediated transport of serotonin. Then you have tetrabenzene, phenylethylamine, amphetamine, MDMA. All these are the inhibitors of vesicular uptake. So they will lead to depletion of the catecholamines because they will not be taken up by the vesicles, will not be recycled. Both MAO and COMT are distributed widely throughout the body. Highest concentration of COMT is in liver and kidney. No COMT is found in sympathetic neuron. While MAO is the chiefly located in the outer surface of mitochondria, while COMT is cytoplasmic. MAO can be of two types, MAO A and MAO B. MAO B is in the cellular system, while MAO A is outside the tissue. MAO A and MAO B. MAO A is cellular regulatory neuron, liver endocytes, and MAO B is dopaminergic, present in neuron, liver, bone, and skin. Why do we need to know so much about these transporters and about these enzymes? Because indirectly there are certain enzyme diffusers or enzyme inhibitors which will have a bearing on the adrenergic transmission. Therefore, we need to know so much about them. So MAO A is outside CNS, adrenergic. MAO B is generally serotonergic. Specific substrate of course, MAO A will be 5-HT or norepinephrine, while that of MAO B will be dopamine. Specific inhibitors are clorgeline and moclobemide, while that of MAO B are selegiline. Selegiline will have role in the management of Parkinson's disease because it will locally increase the dopamine presence in the brain. So I'll just repeat, MAO A is in the adrenergic, it's basically adrenergic, while MAO B is dopaminergic. MAO B is in the brain. For MAO B specific, a substrate is dopamine, while that for MAO A is 5-HT or norepinephrine. And inhibitors of MAO A are chlorgelline or moclobemide, while MAO B inhibitor is selegiline, which is used in the treatment of Parkinson's disease. Norepinephrine, COMT, normetanephrine, MAO VMA, vinyl mandelic acid. Norepinephrine, you have MAO acting on it. Epinephrine, you have MAO acting on it or a COMT acting on it. So whatever acts on whichever neurotransmitter, sympathetic, MAO or COMT, final product which is produced is vinyl mandelic acid. So vinyl mandelic acid excretion in urine could tell you indirectly about the quantity of the sympathetic mediators which are produced. Likewise, dopamine is also metabolized by MAO and COMT to again vinyl mandelic acid, HVA. Now you have different drugs acting on different types of pathways. As I said, therefore, we need to know so much about the pathways because you have drugs regulating the sympathetic flow because of all this. Now, interfering with the synthesis will be metyrosine. Blockage of the uptake 1 at nerve terminal will be cocaine and imipramine. I told you something that will interfere with the synthesis will decrease the sympathomimetic outflow like metyrosine. Then you have blockade of the uptake 1 at the nerve terminal. Here you have drugs like tricyclic antidepressants and cocaine. So they will be acting as indirect sympathomimetic drugs because they will prevent the uptake. So therefore, more of the transmitters will be available at the synaptic clefts to act. Then there is another way of affecting the action, blockage of the storage in the granule. Blockage of the storage in the granule or granular uptake. So it will not be taken up by the granules by the drug known as reserpine. So they will lead to depletion of the catecholamines, reserpine. Promotion of the release. These are indirectly acting sympathomimetic drugs. I told you. They will cause vesicular release of the norepinephrine, which is not sodium dependent, not calcium dependent, unlike the regular release. Promotion of the release by these indirectly acting sympathomimetics like amphetamines and tyramine. Prevention of release, just the opposite, beryllium and guanethidine. Okay, so let me see if I could show you the chart again. So metyrosine inhibits the synthesis. Reserpine inhibits the reuptake, causes depletion. Beryllium and guanethidine inhibit the vesicular release, while cocaine and antidepressants inhibit the uptake, reuptake. Like bertalium and guanethidine, they inhibit the vesicular release. Drugs like amphetamine will cause the vesicular release. It is not shown in this diagram. But amphetamine and tyramine will cause the vesicular release, while bertalium inhibits. So this is the diagram which will try and make you understand this table better. Yeah, sorry, I had it here itself. Sorry, I had to go all the way back. So this correlates with the whole thing wonderfully well. So here you could see so many drugs which will affect the transmission or release. Agents that interfere with the metabolism. As I told you, MAO-B inhibitor is a selegiline, while MAO-A inhibitor is moclobemide or clorgeline. COMT inhibitors, long-acting is tolcapone and short-acting is entacapone. Now coming over to a very important aspect, after all the adrenergic transmission that we talked about, we have to now talk about first the mediators, then the receptors. So what kind of receptors are adrenergic receptors? Adrenergic receptors are G protein coupled receptors that act by increasing or decreasing the production of cyclic AMP. The point to be remembered here is adrenergic receptors are G protein coupled receptors which act by increasing or decreasing the synthesis of cyclic AMP. So adrenergic receptors can be an alpha receptor or a beta receptor. So you have alpha 1 and alpha 2 and beta 1, beta 2 and beta 3 receptors. They say primarily alpha 2 receptors are inhibitory presynaptic receptors. Now, knowing everything about these sympathomimetic drugs is by knowing what these receptors are, where these receptors are present, and what actions are produced by the activation or inhibition of these receptors. Alpha 1 receptor. Alpha 1 receptor acts by activating phospholipase C production by inositol triphosphate and diacylglycerol. Alpha 1 receptor. They are all G protein coupled receptors. Now, alpha 1 receptor acts by activating phospholipase C, production of inositol triphosphate and diacylglycerol. Acts by activating phospholipase C, production of inositol triphosphate and diacylglycerol. IP3 promotes the release of calcium from the intracellular stores and leads to increased cytoplasmic calcium. I'll repeat. Alpha 1 receptors act by activating phospholipase C, production of IP3-DAG. IP3 promotes the release of calcium from the intracellular stores. Increased calcium in the cytoplasm. Now, alpha 1 stimulation of phospholipase A2. Release of free arachidonate. Metabolized by cyclooxygenase or lipoxygenase pathways to form prostaglandins and leukotrienes respectively and produce stimulatory action. So why is alpha 1 producing stimulatory action? First of all, because of stimulation of phospholipase A2, release of free arachidonate, which is metabolized by free arachidonic acid is metabolized by cyclooxygenase or lipoxygenase pathways to form prostaglandins and leukotrienes respectively, and they produce all the actions. Location of alpha 1 receptors is mainly postsynaptic. Most smooth muscles, including the radial smooth muscles of the eye, I'm telling you the location. Radial smooth muscle of the eye, salivary gland, liver cells, heart. Most abundant is alpha 1b. I'll repeat. Most of the smooth muscles, including the radial muscle of the iris contracting will mean pupillary dilatation. Like contraction of the circular muscle of the iris by the muscarinic receptors was causing pupillary constriction. I'm just making you remember what was taught to you last time. So location is mainly postsynaptic, mainly smooth muscles including the radial muscle of the eye, salivary gland, liver and heart. Now as an agonist, stimulation of alpha 1 receptor produces excitatory effects in most organs except in the intestine where it produces inhibitory effects. This is a point to be remembered that at all the organs, the excitatory effects of alpha 1 receptor produces stimulation other than in GIT. Alpha 1 receptor agonists. These include phenylephrine, mefazoline, oxymetazoline, xylometazoline, and midodrine. Just remember a few names. Phenylephrine, methoxamine, mefazoline, midodrine, xylometazoline, these are all alpha 1 receptor agonists. Okay. Am I audible? I just read your questions. Kindly type it. Is my audibility okay? Alpha 2 receptors. Okay, Kartikeya, thanks. So alpha 2 receptors, we have talked about alpha 1 receptors which are generally postsynaptic and they are stimulatory. IP3-DAG mechanism. So I hope I'm still audible. Chalo. Good. So we are talking of alpha 2 receptors. They act by inhibiting adenyl cyclase. Alpha 1 acted by stimulating adenyl cyclase IP3-DAG pathway. Now alpha 2 are located presynaptically or on sympathetic neurons. They are autoreceptors. Extremely important point to remember. Stimulation of autoreceptors reduce the release of both epinephrine and norepinephrine. They are inhibitory autoreceptors. That means you stimulate them, there is inhibition of release. In brain, alpha 2 receptor stimulation, whether pre or post synaptically, decreases sympathetic outflow. Also present in autonomic ganglia, liver, blood vessels, pancreas and platelets. You must know the location. Only then you will be able to understand the action. Alpha 2 receptors are mainly presynaptic and they are inhibitory. While they are also present in brain, whether they are presynaptic or postsynaptic, they will always decrease the sympathetic outflow in the brain. They are in addition present in liver, blood vessels, pancreas and platelets. We will talk about their actions little later. In central nervous system, most dominant is alpha 2A. The anti-nociceptive effects, sedation, hypotension, hypothermia and behavioral actions. So in brain they have got CNS decreasing the sympathetic outflow and depressing. So it is sedation, hypotension, hypothermia. In basal ganglia, the most dominant activity is by modulating the dopamine neurotransmission. So they are present in basal ganglia. Their most dominant action is by modulating the dopamine neurotransmission. Predominant receptor inhibiting hormone release from adrenal medulla. This is alpha 2 receptor. It is a main receptor mediating vasoconstriction is alpha 2B. Alpha 2 agonists. Very important drug clonidine, moxonidine, rimanidine, apraclonidine, guanfacine, guanbazine and tizanidine. Alpha methyl dopa. These are all alpha 2 agonists. See, you don't have to really mug up things, if you know the receptors and their actions. Okay. So if you know where all alpha 2 receptor is producing its effects on, so you can know how these drugs will be acting and how they can be put to any use. So we have talked about alpha 1 and alpha 2 receptors. Alpha 1 act by increasing this phospholipase A2, and then there is phosphoinositol pyruvate and diacylglycerol, increased calcium, while alpha 2 decreases the cyclic AMP activity. There are two types of alpha receptors, alpha 1 and alpha 2, and their locations are also different. While beta receptors are of three types mainly: beta 1, beta 2 and beta 3. So beta 1 receptors stimulate adenylyl cyclase, increase cyclic AMP. Now beta 1 is present mainly post-junctionally at heart, juxtaglomerulus cells and kidney. I'll repeat, beta 1 is present mainly in heart and JG cells in kidney, where it is responsible for the renin release. Now dobutamine has got predominant beta 1 action. There is another drug by the name of isoprenaline. It's a non-specific beta agonist but has got higher affinity than epinephrine at beta 1 receptors. Then you have beta 2 receptors. Now beta 2 receptors are typically present on blood vessels, skeletal muscles, uterus, bronchial muscles, coronaries, liver and cardiac smooth muscle. They act by increasing the cyclic AMP level. I'll repeat, they are located post-synaptically on blood vessel, skeletal muscle, uterus, bronchi, GI smooth muscles, liver and cardiac smooth muscles. So mainly on the smooth muscles. Beta 1 is present in the heart, JG cells. Drugs acting on beta 1 are generally dobutamine, isoprenaline, which is non-specific agonist, higher affinity than epinephrine at beta 1 receptor of isoprenaline. Isoprenaline, norepinephrine, and epinephrine at there are alpha receptor and beta receptor. So epinephrine has got its effect mainly on all the receptors: alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2. While norepinephrine has got no effect on beta 2 receptors. It has got effect on beta 1 mainly and alpha receptors. While isoprenaline has got no effect on alpha receptors whatsoever. So sensitivity of norepinephrine is more than epinephrine for beta receptors. Now beta 2 receptors, except in myocardium, their activation causes smooth muscle relaxation. Present presynaptically stimulate the release of norepinephrine. Point to be remembered is that presynaptically, when alpha 2 receptors are present, they decrease the sympathetic outflow. So they are inhibitory, alpha 2. While beta 2 receptors present presynaptically increase the release of norepinephrine, but at all places other than myocardium. Beta 2 receptors, they cause relaxation, smooth muscle relaxation. So bronchial relaxation, uterus relaxation, urinary tract relaxation, all that is happening by beta 2 receptors. So beta 2 agonists include terbutaline, salbutamol, orciprenaline, formoterol, salmeterol, and bitalterol. Now coming to beta 3 receptors. Beta 3 receptors are present on adipocytes and activation produces lipolysis and thermogenesis. It is also present in detrusor muscle of urinary bladder. Mirabegron is a beta 3 adrenoreceptor agonist approved for use in the urinary incontinence. Activation of this receptor in the bladder leads to detrusor muscle relaxation. So beta 3 receptors are mainly present in adipocytes and are associated with lipolysis and thermogenesis. While it's also present in detrusor muscle in urinary bladder. So this beta 3 receptor agonist mirabegron has been used in urinary incontinence. Activation of beta 3 receptor in the bladder leads to detrusor muscle relaxation. So it can be used in the management of urinary incontinence. Dopamine 1 receptor. We've talked about alpha receptors, we've talked about, and then we've talked about beta receptors, adrenergic receptors. Now we are talking about dopaminergic receptors. Dopamine 1 receptor act by stimulation of adenyl cyclase and increase cyclic AMP. Like beta 1, stimulation of adenyl cyclase and increase cyclic AMP. It is present in renal mesenteric vasculature, vasodilatation and increased blood flow and sodium excretion. It's also present in coronary vessels and heart. Selective agonist of dopamine 1 receptor is phenoldopam. I'll repeat. Dopamine 1 receptor is the most important dopamine receptors. It acts by stimulation of adenyl cyclase and increased cyclic AMP. It is present in renal and mesenteric vasculature, causing vasodilatation and increased blood flow and sodium excretion. renal vasculature, it will cause increased vasodilatation and increased blood flow and sodium excretion. Receptor downregulation. What is desensitization? Continuous receptor stimulation by an agonist causes desensitization of the receptor, whereby the receptor becomes less responsive to the agonist. And this desensitization develops very quickly. It is due to the phosphorylation of the beta receptor by beta ARK that increases the association with the beta arrestin and disrupts coupling with the G protein. So, whenever an agonist is given for a long time for any receptor, the receptor undergoes desensitization and it becomes less responsive to the agonist and it tends to evolve very quickly. Then you have downregulation of receptor. Prolonged exposure of high concentration of agonist causes reduction of the number of receptors due to internalization or endocytosis of the receptors. So, one is the receptor desensitization. Constant stimulation, that is by an agonist, will cause desensitization and receptor becomes less responsive to the agonist, and this happens by phosphorylation of the beta receptor. Then there is receptor down regulation. That means constant exposure to the agonist will lead to the number of reduction of number of receptors due to internalization of the receptors. That was down regulation or desensitization. Now we are talking of upregulation and supersensitivity. Now what happens in upregulation? See, like constant giving of agonist will lead to downregulation or desensitization of a receptor. The prolonged exposure to an antagonist on the opposite, no, antagonist will lead to increase in the number of receptors due to externalization of the receptor. They come out, and therefore there is this upregulation of the receptor. And now, when the agonist is given, the action is extremely exaggerated. Supersensitivity results from denervation and prolonged blockade by an antagonist, and depletion of the neurotransmitters. Supersensitivity results from denervation or prolonged blockade by an antagonist. There could be depletion of the neurotransmitters. It becomes supersensitive, or upregulation. That is downregulation or internalization of the receptors by long dose of agonist, while long dose of antagonist for a good amount of time will lead to upregulation or supersensitivity. So, what do you say? I think we can take a 10 minutes break. There was this question of Aniket Jain about can you explain Mira Begron again? So we can do that. Oh, oh, oh. Yes. See, mirabegron is a drug that acts on the beta 3 receptor, and beta 3 receptor is present in the detrusor muscle. So, whenever there is this problem of incontinence of urine, mirabegron, which is a beta 3 receptor agonist, will be used in the management of incontinence, because activation of this receptor by this drug will lead to detrusal muscle relaxation, and this will help in the management of urinary incontinence. I think that should explain your question, Aniket. And let's give a 5 to 7 minutes break, and then resume the rest of the sympathomimetic drugs. What do you say? So I'm waiting for your replies. Abhinav says okay. Abhinav also says done. So I think let's give it a 10 minutes break and we'll resume after that. All right. So you also can have a little break, have a cup of tea or coffee or whatever you want, and then we begin with our class. All right. A short break. एक मिनट मैं So I think let's resume our class now. So now let's, after the adrenergic transmission, all about how the transmitters are produced, released, on the kind of receptors they are acting. Now let's talk of adrenergic drugs. Adrenergic drugs could be directly acting, indirectly acting, or mixed. You have already got some hang of what is directly acting, that acts directly, indirectly while increasing or decreasing the reuptake, or it could be having both the properties. Okay. Now let's talk about the directly acting sympathomimetic drugs. Directly acting can be catecholamines, could be non-catecholamines. Catecholamines can be endogenous or synthetic. Non-catecholamines can be alpha agonists, alpha 1 agonist, alpha 2 agonist, beta 1 and beta 2 or beta 3 agonist. Okay. Just repeating, directly acting sympathomimetics can be catecholamines or non-catecholamines. Catecholamines can be endogenous or synthetic. Non-catecholamines could be receptor agonists. Directly acting sympathomimetic drugs. These are the drugs that act on the pre and the post-synaptic alpha and beta receptors. Now, endogenous catecholamines. They are high potency drugs, not effective orally. They are polar, inactivation by COMT or MAO. Of course, since they are not effective orally and are polar, they have to be given by parenteral routes, and they are mainly epinephrine, norepinephrine, or dopamine. So I hope this is very clear. This is just what we have already read. We are putting into a perspective of drugs now. Directly acting catecholamines. Now then you have synthetic directly acting sympathomimetic drugs. One were catecholamines, which were natural, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. Then you have directly acting sympathomimetics, which are synthetic. They include isoprenaline, dipivefrin, dobutamine, ibopamine, dopexamine, phenoldopam. Just remember a few names. These are sympathetic, these are synthetic, directly acting sympathomimetic drugs. Then you have indirectly acting sympathomimetics. You've been shown in the diagram that there are some drugs which act indirectly. They act by releasing the norepinephrine from the stores. They act by release of norepinephrine from the stores. Renovation of postganglionic adrenergic neurons prevent their action. Repeated dosing can cause depletion of the stores, and this is known as tachyphylaxis. When you are repeating the indirectly acting sympathomimetics like ephedrine very fast, so the stores of the catecholamines can be depleted and the action can then crash down. This is known as tachyphylaxis or acute desensitization. More lipid soluble than norepinephrine and epinephrine. These are more lipid soluble. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are polar. They include tyramine and amphetamine. They act as indirectly acting sympathomimetics. So you can now understand that why we were doing so much of those charts and their production of the things and degradation, because you have drugs modifying at these levels. Tyramine and amphetamine, oh sorry, Tyramine and amphetamine are the ones that are indirectly acting sympathomimetics. Then you have mixed actions, which have got both direct as well as their own action, like ephedrine. Then you're coming to adrenergic drugs: epinephrine, norepinephrine, isoprenaline. Adrenergic drugs are the ones which are acting on the adrenergic receptors. Dopamine is not an adrenergic drug because it's acting on the dopaminergic receptors. So epinephrine is a wonderful transmitter which will act on all the receptors. I told you that sometime before also. Alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1 and beta 2. Norepinephrine acts on alpha 1, alpha 2 and beta 1. No action on beta 2. While isoprenaline acts on alpha 1 and beta 1 and beta 2. No action on alpha. This slide you have to remember always. It's a very simple thing. Just remember, I have also repeated it many number of times. Non-selective. Drugs act on one or more receptors. Adrenaline almost a non. Noradrenaline on alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1. Isoprenaline on beta 1, beta 2, beta 3. No action on alpha. Dopamine acts on alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1 also. In addition to dopamine and dopamine 1 and dopamine 2. That is also an adrenergic drug. It acts on all the alphas but no action on beta 2. Like noradrenaline, but in addition, dopaminergic actions also. So those were non-selective drugs: adrenaline, noradrenaline, dopamine. Selective. Drugs act on single receptor only. These are because if you have a selectivity of action, such drugs can be put to therapeutic use also. If you have broad or widespread action, it is very difficult to be put to any use. Oh. Alpha 1 are selective. You have phenylephrine, methoxamine, and midodrine. These are selective drugs on selective these receptors. You were told that you have drugs modifying alpha and beta receptors are also adrenergic drugs. You have natural sympathomimetics and you have synthetic drugs. In the synthetic drugs, in the selective drugs, you have alpha 1 selective, phenylephrine, methoxamine, midodrine. Alpha 2 selective are alpha methyl dopa, clonidine, brimonidine. Beta 1 selective, you have dobutamine. Beta 2 selective, you have salbutamol, terbutaline, and salmeterol. You have to remember them. Alpha 1 selective, phenylephrine, methoxamine, midodrine. Alpha 2 selective is methyl dopa, clonidine, brimonidine. Beta 1 is dobutamine and beta 2 is salbutamol, terbutaline. And these are the drugs which have got role in bronchial smooth muscle relaxation and management of bronchial asthma. We will talk about that later. Then you have indirectly acting sympathomimetics, which include amphetamines, cocaine, MDMA, methamphetamine it is, tyramine, nicotine, caffeine, and methylphenidate. These are the agents that cause increased transmission in endogenous chemicals. These are indirectly acting sympathomimetics. They cause increased transmission. Then you have mixed action, ephedrine and pseudoephedrine. When these actions are put to use for various therapeutic conditions like pressor agents, vasoconstrictors, adrenaline, noradrenaline, dopamine, phenylephrine, and ephedrine. They can be used as pressor agents. Cardiac stimulants are adrenaline and dobutamine. Bronchodilators, I told you, all the beta 2 receptor agonists like albuterol, that is salbutamol, isoprenaline, salmeterol, they are all bronchodilators. Nasal decongestants are alpha 1 receptor agonists like xylometazoline and pseudoephedrine. Amphetamine and methamphetamine can be used as CNS stimulants. At beta 2 receptors, when you have relaxation, it is terbutaline, ritodrine, isoxapurin. Anorectic agents include fenfluramine and sibutramine. Okay. So these are the therapeutic uses of various adrenergic drugs depending upon their action. I will just ask, beta is stimulant. By some student, I read the questions. Then why is beta 2 causing relaxation? Because beta 2 causes relaxation. Beta 1 is mainly stimulant at the heart and everything. So your beta receptor at beta 2 receptors will cause relaxation of various smooth muscles like bronchi, like uterus, like blood vessels, vasodilatation. So I hope this point is very clear. Beta 1, beta 2 and beta 3, different actions. Okay. This was the question by Lalit Agarwal. I hope this point is clear, Lalit, that at beta 2 it is causing dilatation and relaxation. Oh. Yeah. So these are some of the uses of the adrenergic drugs. So this finishes here and the lecture doesn't finish. So we move on to our next part in the lecture today. We are continuing the adrenergic drugs. So we've talked about directly acting and indirectly acting and mixed acting adrenergic drugs. These drugs act directly on the pre and postsynaptic alpha and beta receptors. Endogenous catecholamines are high potency drugs. They are not effective orally, they are polar, and inactivation by COMT and MAO. They have to be given by parenteral route. I already told you that. These are the synthetic catecholamines. Indirectly acting ones are the ones which will increase the release of norepinephrine from the various stores, and mixed action will have both the actions. This slide I've already shown you that epinephrine acts on all, norepinephrine acts on not on beta 2, isoprenaline acts not on alpha. Now let's come to the individual drugs like epinephrine. Now epinephrine, I'm sure you know by now that it acts on all the receptors. Okay. what will it do? It will increase the force of contraction, increase the heart rate, and increase the conduction through the AV node. Sympathetic nerve, norepinephrine is produced. There is a presynaptic alpha 2 receptor which decreases its synthesis. Then there is a presynaptic beta 2 receptor which will increase the release of norepinephrine. Norepinephrine, once released, will act on the beta 1 or beta 2 receptors. So GS will be stimulated, ATP to cyclic AMP, phosphorylation of various enzymes, calcium dependent, and there is contraction, and there is net cardiac stimulation. The physiological consequences of beta 1 receptor activation: increased force of myocardial contraction, increased rate of contraction, and excessive stimulation leading to arrhythmias might also happen. Stimulation of beta 1 receptors on the pacemaker cells makes the slope of diastolic depolarization steeper. Hence, increases the rate of pacemaker activity, and large doses may provoke cardiac arrhythmias by activating the latent pacemakers. Now, what is it doing to the blood vessels? Alpha 1 and beta 2 receptors. Vascular blood vessels have got alpha 1 and beta 2 receptor. Beta 2 will always cause vasodilatation. Beta 1 will cause vasoconstriction. Increase arterial resistance. Now, vessels in skin, mucous membrane, kidney, and some other abdominal organs. Alpha 1 receptor mediated vasoconstriction. So, I am telling you indirectly the actions of epinephrine. Alpha 1 and beta 2 receptors cause vasoconstriction and vasodilatation. Vasoconstriction, increased arterial resistance. Beta 2 mediated vasodilatation. Vessels in the skin and mucous membrane, kidney, and other organs will be alpha 1 mediated vasoconstriction. While arterial blood vessels on skeletal muscle will have and liver will have beta 2 vasodilatation. Beta 2 always vasodilatation. Renal blood vessels predominantly dopamine 1 vasodilatation. So you have seen what are the actions of epinephrine on blood vessels. Mainly vasoconstriction, some blood vessels vasodilatation, on skin, mucous membrane, kidney, heart, kidney and some other abdominal organs vasoconstriction. On skeletal muscle and liver dilatation. Renal you have vasodilatation, predominantly D1. Coronary blood vessels, predominantly beta 2. Alpha 2 and dopamine 1. Dopamine 1 receptors also cause vasodilatation only, as is what we were seeing with the renal blood vessel also. So in coronaries also there is vasodilatation by all these receptors, beta 2, alpha 2 and dopamine 1. Vasodilatation of coronaries is also affected by hypoxia. Pulmonary blood vessels, you have alpha 1 which predominates, therefore you have vasoconstriction. No change in the cerebral vasculature. You have equal number of alpha 1 and beta 2. No change in the tone of systemic veins. Now what happens to blood pressure? At low doses, beta 2 activation predominates and resulting decrease in the diastolic blood pressure and total peripheral resistance, although the mean blood pressure may not significantly decrease. So what it does to blood pressure? Initially there could be a dip in blood pressure because at low doses beta 2 activation happens and there is a decrease in the diastolic blood pressure. At moderate dose, biphasic response of blood pressure is seen, alpha 1 and beta 1 action, because of which the BP also increases. Now sudden fall of blood pressure, fall in the plasma concentration will lead to beta 2 effect, unmasked, fall in blood pressure. So when the concentration of adrenaline in the body is decreasing, it will lead to beta 2 effects and fall in blood pressure. Initially in low doses also that effect, but in high doses it will cause biphasic response, increase in the blood pressure because of the alpha 1 and predominantly beta 1 action. I hope it's clear. Okay. Now, vasomotor reversal of Dale. When alpha 1 receptors are blocked, epinephrine will produce hypotension and because of uninhibited beta 2 receptors. So, whenever you are giving adrenaline, before, if you give the alpha receptor blockage, there will be vasomotor reversal of Dale. That means instead of increase in the blood pressure with adrenaline, you will see fall in blood pressure because alpha receptors have already been blocked and beta receptors by virtue of beta 2 receptors will cause fall in blood pressure. This is known as vasomotor reversal of Dale. Now, effect of adrenaline on bronchial on smooth muscles. Bronchodilation via beta 2 receptors. Blood vessels of the mucous membrane of the upper respiratory tract are constricted via alpha receptors. They decrease the bronchial secretions, also inhibit the release of allergic mediators from the mast cells. Physiologic antagonist to substance that cause bronchoconstriction. So I'm talking of the action of adrenaline on bronchial smooth muscles. They cause bronchodilation. Blood vessels of the mucous membrane could be constricted because of the alpha 1 action. There could be decreased bronchial secretions, inhibit release of allergic mediators. All these things are beneficial effects for bronchial asthma. CO bronchodilation, decreased secretion, and inhibition of release of allergic mediators. All these things make it a very, very appropriate candidate beta 2 receptor agonist for selective beta 2 receptor agonist for the management of asthma. Now its effect on GIT. Alpha 2 receptors uh, affect presynaptically at the cholinergic neurons, decrease the acetylcholine release and decrease tone and motility indirectly. So presynaptically, these drugs will act via the alpha 2 receptors, and alpha 2 will also decrease, alpha 2 stimulation will decrease the acetylcholine synthesis. Beta 2 receptors will cause relaxation directly, peristalsis is reduced. Alpha 1 receptors present at the sphincters will cause contraction of the sphincter. But these effects depend upon pre-existing tone of the muscle. If tone is high, epinephrine will cause relaxation, and if low, it will cause contraction. Otherwise, epinephrine will actually be causing relaxation. Why? Because it will decrease acetylcholine, cause direct relaxation of by the beta 2 receptors. By alpha 2 receptor, decreasing the acetylcholine, beta 2 receptor, direct relaxation. Alpha 1 receptors, it will cause constriction of the sphincters. Bladder. Trigone and sphincter will be contracted. Sphincters are contracted because they are under the control of alpha 1 receptors. While detrusor, I told you, while mirabegron, beta 2 receptor relaxed, so detrusor is relaxed by beta 2 receptors. Relaxation of uterus because beta 2 is more than alpha 1. So it is all the chakkar of which receptor is present in abundance where. That will be deciding what kind of an effect will be produced. Now, contraction of the non-pregnant uterus because non-pregnant uterus has got alpha 1 more than beta 2. While in pregnant, beta 2 is more. Now, coming to the effect on eye. You have pupil, constrictor pupillae and dilator pupillae. Now, what does these alpha agonists do? Alpha agonists will cause contraction of the radial muscle, and hence that is the dilator pupillae, and cause pupillary dilatation. And meiosis will be caused by circular muscle of the iris, which is innervated by the cholinergic pathway. You contract dilator pupillae, pupil size will increase. You relax dilator pupillae, pupil size will decrease. That is meiosis. This is dilator pupillae. Constriction, contraction of dilator pupillae, you have mydriasis. Relaxation of dilator pupillae, you have constriction. Effects on the eye. Mydriasis happened due to a radial muscle contraction. Very important aspect. This has got no action on cycloplegia. So it can be given easily for fundoscopic examination, but not for refractive error examination. Alpha 2 agonists decrease the formation of aqueous humor. Effect on the eye are extremely important because they could be used for the treatment of glaucoma, fundoscopy, refractive error examination. So mydriasis due to radial muscle contraction, alpha 1 receptors, epinephrine increases the outflow of aqueous humor and decreases the formation of aqueous humor. Alpha 2 agonists decrease the formation of aqueous humor. So epinephrine does both. Smooth muscle of the eye is contracted by the alpha 1 receptor. Now in pancreas, alpha 2 receptors are present, insulin secretion is inhibited. Beta 2 receptors, glucagon secretion is stimulated. So alpha effect on insulin secretion predominant. Therefore, there is hyperglycemia because of the alpha 2 receptors being present. So this is the metabolic action of adrenaline in liver. Beta 2 receptors promote glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis. Release of glucose from the liver along with potassium. There is hyperglycemia. Epinephrine promotes a fall of plasma potassium due to enhanced uptake of potassium into the skeletal muscle via an action on the beta 2 receptor. This action can be exploited in the management of familial hyperkalemia in familial periodic flaccid paralysis. This is a very rare use of epinephrine. Enhanced uptake of potassium into the skeletal muscle can happen and lead to fall in plasma potassium level. More important is hyperglycemia that these drugs cause at the level of liver. In adipose tissue, beta 3 lipolysis, production of free fatty acids, calorigenic effect. Beta 3 receptors, lipolysis, adipose tissue, increase calorigenic effect. So therefore, it was thought that maybe beta 2 agonists can be given for the management of obesity, but it hasn't really proved that beneficial. It's just a research study. In skeletal muscle and heart, increased glycolysis, beta 2 effect, improved blood supply to the heart muscle or skeletal muscle, beta 2 action. Piloerection, alpha 1, sweating of palms and soles. This can happen with adrenaline. CNS, there is anxiety and tremors. Miscellaneous effects is thick salivary secretion due to the reduced blood flow due to vasoconstriction, alpha activity. Increase in the number of circulating leukocytes. Renin released from JG cells is via beta 1 receptor. So these are the miscellaneous actions. Pharmacokinetic. Absorption of epinephrine as well as other catecholamines from GIT is negligible due to the rapid conjugation and oxidation in the intestinal mucosa of the GI tract. Subcutaneous absorption is slow due to vasoconstriction. Inhaled effect is largely restricted because of the respiratory tract in low doses. So you can give inhaled if you want to give local effect. Liver, which is rich in both COMT and MAO, destroys most circulating epinephrine. So this is the pharmacokinetics, very important, of epinephrine. Toxicity: there could be fear, anxiety, headache, tremor, cardiac arrhythmia, cerebral hemorrhage due to severe hypertension, especially with the use of large doses or rapid IV infusion. The rapid IV infusion can lead to cardiac cerebral hemorrhage or cardiac arrhythmias, fear, anxiety, restlessness. Therapeutic uses of epinephrine: emergency relief of hypersensitivity reactions including anaphylaxis. Preferred route is IM 0.3 to 0.5 ml of 1:1000 solution. This dose should be remembered. For very few drugs, those need to be remembered because it is important. It's a life-saving thing. Restoring cardiac rhythm. In patients with cardiac arrest, IV route is preferred. One is severe hypersensitivity reaction, cardiac arrest, and the third important use is um, with the prolonging the action of local anesthetics, presumably by decreasing the local blood flow and reducing the systemic absorption. As a topical hemostatic agents on bleeding surfaces, such as in mouth or in bleeding peptic ulcers during endoscopy. It can be used as a local hemostatic agents because it causes vasoconstriction. Inhalation of epinephrine may be used in the treatment of post-intubation and infectious croup. Also in bronchial asthma as an aerosol. But you would rather prefer more broncho-specific drugs like beta-2 stimulants rather than epinephrine. I think with this we have finished with what I was supposed to be covering for this lecture, and I think I am left with a couple, maybe half an hour to 40 minutes of these sympathomimetic drugs, and then I will begin with alpha blockers in my subsequent class. My two lectures will be now on Tuesday after lunch, and then hopefully I should finish it on the coming Saturday. The rest of the sympathomimetic the system and the whole of the ANS. So hopefully by next week we should be over with this topic. And just for the knowledge of everybody, I would like to say that after we finish, most likely on the coming Tuesday, that the Tuesday after this week's Tuesday, that is 25th, I think it is. Let me just check up. Uh, we should be having a ANS test. Okay, I'll tell you the date almost. Yeah, maybe I'm not very sure, but maybe on 25th of this month, that is May, you will have a MCQ based ANS test. Is that okay? Let me see if I'm able to work it out. Otherwise, we'll keep it. But the thing is, it is now high time for you to start revising your topic. We have a test or we don't have a test is a different story. But now I've almost covered most of the ANS. I'm left with 3 more lectures. So a bit on the sympathomimetic drugs, then I'll be talking about alpha blockers and then on beta blockers. So kindly start revising your system. That's all I can tell you right now. And any questions or else call it